The thing about disappointment is that when you experience it a number of times, you lose hope. Hope is what I want to talk to you about on this episode. If you're currently feeling hopeless, struggling to find the motivation for what used to bring you joy, something that seemed mundane at a point in your life, this episode is for you. This is the Soulfire Inspiration Podcast. My name is Webby, and I do this to encourage and inspire you to live intentionally and purposefully. Before we get into it, I'd like to invite you to stream my music on Spotify, Apple Music, or wherever else you get your music fix. I recently released a song called A Long Way, inspired by my life's journey. I think it'll bless your life. I have other records available that you will enjoy on my artist profile. I'm going to leave the link in the description of this episode. If you prefer, just search for Webby, W-E-B-I, on your music service, and voila, you'll be home free. Thank you for your support, and thank you to those of you who are already listening. Some of you have sent me a lot of amazing feedback. I really appreciate that. It really encourages me too. Okay, now getting right into it. Here are two scriptures that I'm going to use as the basis of what I want to share with you. The first is this, Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1, and this is the NIV version. It says, "Now faith is confidence in what we hope for, and assurance about what we do not see." I want you to hold on to that. The second one is out of Isaiah chapter 40, verse 31, also the NIV version, and it says, "But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint." All right, confession time. At different points in my life, I've been disappointed that certain things haven't happened like I hoped, nor at the time I hoped they would. Honestly, for me, the net effect of feeling disappointed was becoming distant and apathetic towards believing God's promises because I felt like He was holding out on me. Now listen, I'm usually the encouragement guy. I see the problem, I feel the pain, but immediately pivot to the lesson, the spiritual significance, or the next best action to take. But at those points of my life, I struggled to pick myself up from the floor, and I started to wonder why that was. Why would I go through something like this after praying, believing, and so on? You see, it's hard to admit that I sometimes struggle with my faith. It's hard to admit that while I've encouraged others to hold on to hope, I've sometimes lost mine. And from all the pondering I'd done on this, it hit me that that's why I'd proverbially become one with the floor. But let's gain some perspective. You see, God never said that we won't feel pain, anxiety, hopelessness, weariness, discouragement, or be grief-stricken as we journey through life on this side of heaven. Actually, in John 16:33, Jesus said that in this world we will have trouble, but to not lose heart because He has overcome the world. I think you could also say that losing heart is synonymous with losing hope. So then, our hope can rest on Him because He is victorious over the circumstances that characterize the human experience. God doesn't expect perfection, nor does He get offended when we question Him about what we're going through or why. In fact, I've learned that He welcomes it so that in that moment, He can give us revelation and rest in exchange for our striving. So this isn't to say that we don't have a part to play, but that part doesn't involve not needing Him, trusting in Him, or hoping in Him. Rather, it's an acknowledgement of this fact. He is and will always be in control of the outcome. We are responsible for our participation. For emphasis, let me just say that again. He is and will always be in control of the outcome. We are responsible for our participation. You have to understand this also. The enemy is never afraid of how much you pray, go to church, give or tithe, or any of the other similar spiritual activities you engage in. What he's afraid of is you having and holding on to hope. Hope is the foundation on which faith is built. If you can't hope, then you can't have faith. When you have no faith, you can't trust God or take him at his word. And I'll take you back to Hebrews 11 verse 1. It says in that first line, now faith is confidence in what we hope for. When you say it a couple of times, you realize hope goes first, faith comes next. You have hope, and therefore you can have faith, and that faith becomes confidence. Faith is the confidence that that thing you don't see, you will see. That thing you want to happen, it will happen. You see? So without faith, it is difficult for you to hope. It is difficult for you to trust God or take him at his word. Without hope, you will stop praying, you'll stop seeking God, and eventually you'll become disillusioned. Soon after, the faith in God you once professed becomes anger that keeps you distant from him. Remember I told you earlier on that I'd become apathetic? Yeah, that's kind of what happens, and that's how I know. Whenever you hear about someone else's faith, you're likely going to become cynical towards them. Friend, this is exactly what makes you a great target of the enemy's strategy. Because at this point, you don't need much convincing to rage against God and abandon everything you once believed and held on to. And this is the tragedy, that many believers don't realize that this is actually the enemy's endgame, and that it happens gradually. Before long, hopelessness will have made you drift so far from the shore that you can't see it even if you tried. At that moment, you will think that God has given up on you because you gave up on hope. The thing about human beings is that we think God is like us. We think he's transactional. But when you look at the scriptures, you discover if God was transactional, there'd be no grace, right? But that's a whole other podcast episode. So then ultimately, you'll stop trying to get back to the shore I was talking about, and you'll settle where you are, hopelessly adrift. Here's the main takeaway, the main thought that I want to sort of challenge your thinking with. Here's what I want you to take with you when this episode ends. Hope is the most powerful thing a person can possess because it is the driving force of life. When you lose hope, you lose everything. This is why there's a constant spiritual war against you to dispossess you of your hope. Hope is the most powerful thing a person can possess. It's the most powerful weapon you have, my friend. Think about it for a minute. When you get out of bed, you hope that it'll be a good day. Maybe you even pray that it will. I hope you do. When you send your CV in for a job application, you hope that you'll get the post. And if you don't, chances are that you'll try again elsewhere and hope that you find success. Take, for example, me here. When I write a song, I hope that it encourages you and uplifts your spirit. Everything we do is in some way fueled by hope. Hope is like blood. Without it, your life wouldn't be anything like it is, even with the challenges you face. You simply wouldn't have the strength to withstand life without hope. And the best place to put your hope is in Jesus, just as he tells us to in Isaiah chapter 40, verse 31, and I read a few moments ago. We don't stop asking God for miracles or breakthroughs because we don't believe he's able to give them. We stop asking because we've stopped hoping that he will. We sometimes stop believing because we came up with a timeline within which we expected God to act, and then when he didn't, we took that as a sign of him denying us our desire. And I think everybody is guilty of this, the person talking to you included, right? God never promised to do everything we ask, but he promised to work all things out for our good and for his glory. The act of asking is meant to be a reminder of where we put our hope. It's not a transaction. And you'll do very well every time you think about that, remember it, and allow it to guide you. Here's something that we like to refer to as an unpopular opinion. Not everything we ask for is good for us. In hindsight, I've had moments where I'm grateful that God didn't answer a prayer that I honestly prayed. So if you don't get what you ask for, you can know that it's because God is good and He has better in store for you according to a plan He put in place long before you got here. That perspective will change how you pray. So here's a question that I want to ask you. What have you stopped hoping for? What did you stop believing would become a reality in your life? I'd like to encourage you to go write it down or write those things down and begin asking again, hoping again. I'm confident that your hope and your faith in God will get you an answer. Thank you for listening in. If you've been encouraged by this episode, consider listening to the other episodes available on this channel and draw more encouragement from them. While you're at it, please subscribe to know when I release a new episode. Please also rate this podcast and leave a comment because it helps the podcast get suggested to other listeners like yourself. If you are so inclined, please support this podcast by donating. Details on how you could do so are also in the description. Wherever you are, wherever you are found, whatever you do, don't forget to be love. I'll catch you on the next one.